Okay, this part of the lesson is going to take you into your lab. So starting on slide 14 here, it says that for the lab we have to write a program that will be called gascalc.py, and we also have to produce a program development plan to go along with it. So we're going to start working on that together, and then you can finish it up and turn in those two files, gascalc.py and program development plan, as part of the lab. There's also one more lab file that is coffee sales, but we'll get to that in a minute. So the nice thing about having all this information in the PowerPoint is that it will correspond to the sections of the program development plan. So you can get this template out of D2L and then more or less use information that's in the PowerPoint to fill it in. So basically, the type of information that you've been writing in the doc string will go up into the problem definition. The program asks the user for miles driven, gallons of gas used, and price of gas, and reports the MPG and total cost of the trip. Now that's not too fancy, but you know, it will get us by for right now. When you look at this, what variables are you actually going to need and what calculations? We won't have functions at this stage of our learning, but we do have variables and calculations. So variables for this program, we look over here and we see number of miles driven, gallons of gas, price of gas. Let's start with that. And Word, you know, automatically capitalizes, which I don't do in my program, but let's just live with that right now. We have also calculations. And those calculations will be cost of the trip and miles per gallon gas mileage. So we'll have MPG, miles per gallon, and we'll have trip cost or something of that nature. Okay? Now, how is miles per gallon figured? We have to use these facts up here in order to do our calculation. So miles per gallon would be, you know, miles divided by gallons. Or gallons divided by miles. Which would it be? Trip cost. Trip cost. Now, we're tempted to think that this calculation has to do with the trip cost, but actually only the gallons times the price. And again, I don't have to be precise here about matching up the names of the variables because this is not code, this is pseudocode. Okay? So in Python, I would have to, if I said miles driven here, I'd have to say miles driven here. If I said gallons of gas here, I would have to match that up. Okay? So you're probably getting used to that. So we have a basic list of variables and calculations that are needed in our program. So when we get to section 3, it is what order do we want to do this in? Okay? when I look at this PowerPoint, and I start right about here, ask the user for the number of miles, ask them the number of gallons, ask them the price of gas, use the input to figure out the cost of the trip in the MPG, and then format a table. That is pretty much the steps in order. So, you know, normally as a developer you'd have to figure that out, but in our case, I'm just going to copy that and then put it down here. I'm going to tweak it a little. Okay, put it over to the bullets. Okay, so ask the user for the number of miles they drove, ask them the number of gallons of gas they used, then ask for the price of gas. And then use the input, and then format the results. So, I just wanted to walk through that to show you how this PowerPoint in itself, it really takes you pretty far for your plan, okay? And so your plan probably is not going to look exactly like mine, and it shouldn't, but it will be pretty close. The coding, we're going to say C gas calc.py file. Okay? So in other words, we're submitting the Python file for step 4. Testing and debugging, now that should come out of your own effort to run your program, but it's going to, let's say you get your program working, it's going to look a lot like this. Okay? And that's only if the program's working. So yours may have, you know, different data than mine because you tested it with different numbers. But it would be a picture is the point that I'm making there. Oops, what happened to it? Oh, there it is. Let's pull it down here into section 5. So that goes into section 5. Go ahead. It's the easy stuff that turns out to be kind of consuming. Okay, I'm going to try this again. Boom. 5. Boom. Boom. Stick it in there. Okay, that puts it in the right spot. So section 5 is more pictorial in nature. Now, question 6 is completely open-ended. I'm not going to actually fill it in because this should be your ideas for improvement in the future. And so I would actually like to see what you would have to say there. Ideas for improvement with that. Okay? So as far as the plan goes, you know, you shouldn't see a plan that is less than a page usually. It's usually going to be between 1 and 2 pages until you get it actually sorted out. Also, make sure is that when you describe it, you include everything that it needs to do. When you have the variables and the calculations, make sure it's comprehensive, and as well the steps, and then this testing. Now, if you run into errors, you may have some pictures here of your program going to an error. That's okay. That's part of the process. This section, I'm going to say, would be like maybe 3 lines long, so I will let you fill that in. So as far as actually coding the file, I do want to show you a little bit of work that I did on that. Of course, you have your doc string. You are defining some variables, as we discussed, and you are doing some calculations based on those variables that the user provided. And then, you know, as usual, some of the more challenging part is the formatting. And I am helping you out here to show two different ways. The reason why when I run my program I get two versions which are the same is because I have demonstrated two separate table configurations here. One of them is using the longhand.format style, and if you recall, here's piece 1, 2, and 3 with the formatting codes over here. 1, 2, and 3, same formatting codes. In this case, they're all exactly the same, and I'm more or less leaving a blank here because MPG doesn't need a $sign, but I still need to leave space so that it will, align properly. So that's the dot format style, the longhand. Here's an example, and I don't believe that I otherwise demonstrated this, using the shorthand, F string, and putting that string right inside here, and with the format code. So I think in the previous slides I only demonstrated this being a variable name, but now you have an example here where this is actually the string being put right into the shorthand method, and nothing there, $sign there, and then here's a variable being put into the formatting code. And so I know I'm pretty much, like giving you the solution to this program, but, between all of the new things and the fact that we're not meeting together with the tutors, I thought, that would be fitting. I don't want you to have both of these, but I want you to experiment with them and decide on one. Yours, your output shouldn't have two versions, okay? But you should be able to run this program with different data. And so, what if I drove 1,000 miles and I used 20 gallons of gas? I have no idea if that's reasonable. Okay. Came out with the same MPG, but the trip cost being more. Okay. So it still lines up. And I wanted to do that for the purpose of saying, obviously these figures up here, they are not hard-coded. They are taken from the user. And so if the user provides different data, it should still work out and print nicely. Normally what I do is when I give you an assignment and I show a sample output, I will try to run your program with that sample input, but, especially as we go forward, I may try to put unexpected dollar figures in there and numbers in there just to see, does it still work? And so, you're not trying to produce a program that only prints this out. And I hope that that's becoming clear. It's not even that we as the programmer provide that information, but now the user provides it. Okay? So I think we will stop this video and then talk about coffee sales and the homework, and that should get us to the next class.